he's been playing for 10 hours. There's not even a goal or a boss fight. He's just walking, being in the moment, and he's not the only one. Across countless worlds, hundreds of millions of players are doing the same. But why do these games pull us in so deeply? You see, there's something intrinsically surreal about a world without limits that stretches as far as the eye can see, and beyond. It resonates with man's primal desire for freedom and exploration, and as most of us would agree, this yearning for freedom and exploration is not usually satisfied in actual modern-day life. However, while open worlds promise endless freedom, the way we obsessively, repeatedly, and sometimes compulsively engage with them leads to something other than freedom. Let's call it what it is: addiction. Not always in the clinical, life-ruining sense, but always in the emotional sense. And sometimes, yes, even in the clinical sense, because these games are built with psychological hooks that hijack your reward circuits, drip dopamine into your bloodstream, and keep you chasing the next high. It wasn't always like this. You see, a very, very, very long time ago, video games kept us on rails. For the longest time, games followed a clear, linear path from start to finish. But then, in the 1980s, a game called Elite let players pilot a ship through a vast galaxy of stars. And in 1986, The Legend of Zelda dropped players into a kingdom they could explore in any direction. It was a radical sense of freedom for its time. And just like that, the seeds of the open world were planted. But the true revolution came in the early 2000s. In 2001, Grand Theft Auto 3 opened the gates to an entire 3D city where you could steal a car, chase criminals, or simply drive and listen to the cartel radio. A year later, The Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind arrived with an expansive fantasy island to explore. You could ignore the main quest entirely and just do side quests, or just pick some flowers and maybe even read books within the game itself. Exactly. For the first time, a game truly said, go anywhere, do anything, just enjoy and do whatever the hell you want. And of course, you don't need me to tell you that gamers never felt so liberated. In a very real sense of the word, it was a new paradigm. Open world design became its own genre, where each generation brought bigger, more detailed worlds. The Assassin's Creed series, for example, took us to historical open worlds where you could feel the atmosphere of the past for yourself. Skyrim in 2011 leveled the whole world alongside the player so you could roam anywhere at any time. It introduced a system of radiant quests that could generate endless new missions to make sure that there's always something for you to do. Of course, it can feel a little redundant at times, but enough to keep the world feeling alive. That same year, Minecraft, as in the single best-selling game of all time, gave us an infinite, procedurally generated world of blocks. Yes, it's not technically infinite, but for what it's worth, the Minecraft world is procedurally infinite for all practical purposes. It's big enough that you'd never run out of space, even if you played for a lifetime. And players have used that space to build things like the Uncensored Library, which is a fully explorable structure that hosts articles and books banned in countries with heavy censorship. See? Minecraft is the game where basically everything under the sun has been recreated. I mean, a one-to-one replica of Earth generated using satellite data, working calculators, CPUs, and even a playable version of Minecraft inside Minecraft. Westeros from Game of Thrones, Tolkien's Middle-earth, and in one case, a 2,000-plus day hardcore survival world, where a player turned their map into a sprawling continent of civilizations, lore, and interconnected megastructures. Ultimately, it's not wrong to say that Minecraft made open-world games become the norm for big-budget games. Grand Theft Auto V's Los Santos City buzzed with so much detail and life that characters react realistically to the player's goofiness.
You are alone, you pathetic psychopath!
And I'm not sure what else we're gonna get before GTA 6, but GTA 6 itself would most definitely be the next tier of open-world games. The Witcher 3 in 2015 offered a vast continent rich with story, where every village has its own tale. There's also No Man's Sky. It generated an entire universe of 18 quintillion planets. That's 18 billion. Yes, billion twice. I mean, just to put it into perspective, if every single person on Earth, literally all 8 billion of us, worked together and visited one planet every second, it would still take over 71 years to see all 18 quintillion planets in No Man's Sky. That's with the entire human race exploring a planet a second, 24/7, for over 71 years. Yeah, this is how open the open world games have become. But of course, it's not just about the size of the open worlds. It's also about the depth. Day and night cycles, weather changes, wild animals hunting their prey, NPCs following schedules are just basic little details that make you feel as though the world goes on with or without you. But what about how much these details have evolved? Well, in Red Dead Redemption 2, if you leave an animal carcass out, it rots. If you shoot someone and ride away, people may recognize you later. Your clothes get dirty. Your horse remembers the roads you've taken. You could pet your dog, play poker, shave your beard. And again, not because the game tells you to, but because the world makes space for those small, human moments that make the world itself feel real. In Elden Ring, nothing is handed to you. There's no quest markers, not even blinking arrows, just the wind, ruins on the horizon, and that gut feeling that there may very well be something out there. And so when you do find something, like an NPC hiding in a cave or a hidden boss, it feels like an actual discovery. And that's a big deal. Yes, exactly. Modern open-world games have evolved so much that they've stopped trying to guide you. Even Breath of the Wild, which seems so minimal, is layered in ways you don't expect. The rain ruins your climb, lightning strikes your metal weapon, and fire spreads through grass. Cyberpunk 2077 is another phenomenal example of a world that moves with or without you. And, by the way, the anime adaptation of Cyberpunk Edgerunners is gonna get a second season. Hell yeah. But of course, this incredible freedom and scale came with a very obvious consequence. And that brings us back to the addiction. Why do we find it so hard to put these games down? Part of the answer lies deep in our brains. Open-world games are designed to tap directly into our reward circuits. Every undiscovered location lights up our sense of wonder. Every treasure chest opened or weapon found triggers a small dopamine hit, a surge of satisfaction. It's the same little rush a gambler may feel with each pull of the slot machine. It's like, maybe the next loot drop will be cooler. These games scatter rewards and curiosities everywhere, and because our brains crave novelty, and because open worlds never stop offering it, addiction becomes part of the design. And you know what's crazy? We feel productive even while wandering aimlessly, because the game makes us think we're making progress. Doesn't matter if it's just ticking another location off the map. However trivial, it feels like an accomplishment. It's not so different from the gratification of crossing items off a to-do list, is it? But paradoxically, having too many choices can also paralyze us. Psychologists call it decision paralysis. When faced with limitless options, we sometimes freeze up and become unable to decide what to do next. It's like being in a supermarket where you stroll around for novelty, but eventually end up buying the same old snacks you always do. To be fair, the analogy is kind of cringy, but it makes sense. You open the map, and it's just chaos with quests everywhere and icons all over the place. And instead of feeling excited, you just feel kinda stuck. So what do? You ignore the main quest and go do something chill. Maybe fish for a bit. However, even when you're not chasing the main quest or making progress, you're still in the game. That feeling of, I don't know what to do, but I don't want to stop. That's part of the hook. Oh, but it's therapeutic? Sure, it can be, but you've got players retreating into these games. You have kids who have grown up spending entire nights building virtual caves in Minecraft while the anxieties of the real world pile up. These worlds can take your mind off of things, but they don't solve your stress. They just give us a consistent, beautiful, and sometimes same old distraction so we don't have to face the mess outside. I mean, even all those stories about games helping people through dark times can sometimes boil down to the game filling the void where real coping mechanisms or support systems should be. Open-world games are a highly effective, endlessly replayable pacifier. Plus, they give you the illusion of belonging. You spend enough time in these games, and you even get attached to the NPC shopkeeper who always greets you. And again, I don't think it's a problem when you play the game consciously more often than not. This is not about not having fun, it's about addiction. And addictions are not fun. They're just there to keep you stuck. This is why even though the average isekai fantasy anime slop gets trashed for being unwatchable, there's always a market. For many fans, it just feels comfy to mindlessly watch the same old tropes. And you see, there's also this thing called open world fog. You boot up a game like Skyrim or Assassin's Creed and brace yourself for adventure. But instead, you're hit with a map covered in 1,000 icons and the nagging feeling that you're somehow playing it wrong if you're not checking every single box. That is analysis paralysis, but on a global scale. Compare that to the humble linear game. Think about the sharp focus of God of War from 2018, the perfectly paced narrative of The Last of Us, or the relentless forward momentum of Doom from 2016. These games have a clear beginning, a middle, and an end. And let me just say this, linear games are arguably better for your mental health, and exponentially better than mindlessly scrolling on TikTok, YouTube Shorts, or God forbid, Twitter. Or I don't know, I think they call it X these days. Anyways, in a linear game, you know when you're done. You defeat the final boss, the credits roll, and you get a genuine sense of completion. Reaching the conclusion feels like finishing a great book or movie. And by the way, I'm not saying that this isn't the case with open world games like Skyrim, but it does become a problem when you feel like you have to see everything. I mean, open world games are time sinks by design. With linear games, you could pick it up, play through a significant chunk, and put it down feeling like you made real progress, without the nagging guilt of an unfinished digital universe. But that's not the case with open world games. Maybe the best gaming isn't a world without limits, but a world that knows exactly when to say goodbye. Of course, I still love open world games. This is just me pointing out the difference, and who cares about mental health anyway? Well, back in 2018, the World Health Organization finally acknowledged gaming as a real addiction. Now, we could talk about balancing real life and gaming, but it vanishes when you're deep in a world designed to obliterate it. Make no mistake, none of this is accidental. The game industry spends billions to study exactly how to monetize your attention and exploit your psychology. Here's how they actually do it. Let's start with the slot machine effect. This is the foundation of exploitation. Your brain loves dopamine, that feel-good chemical, especially when it's unpredictable. This is why they don't give you a reward every time you kill an enemy or open a chest. Instead, they use variable ratio reinforcement. It's like a slot machine. You pull the lever, like kill a mob or open a loot box, and you may get something good. Because you never know when the next rare drop or powerful item will appear, your brain is wired to keep grinding. Or in plain English, it means it keeps you hooked longer, even when the rewards are not as frequent. Next, compulsion loops and quests without end are simply for endless engagement. Every single marker on that map, every glowing collectible, every side quest is a carefully placed cognitive trigger. Each one represents an open loop in your brain. And because our brains naturally crave completion, developers exploit this by creating an endless cascade where completing one quest unlocks 3 more. Skyrim's Radiant quests are the classic example of these. There's also progression porn and the illusion of achievement. They're selling you the illusion of constant, tangible progress in a world where real-life achievements are slow and difficult. Your experience bar filling, a new ability unlocking, a map revealing another chunk are just carefully timed micro-rewards that trigger dopamine and make your brain feel productive and accomplished, even when you're just performing trivial, repetitive tasks. However, so far, this is the obvious stuff. Now, let me also tell you psychological manipulation that is not so obvious because the rabbit hole goes even deeper. There's the sunk cost fallacy. What? You've already invested 50, 100, 500 hours? And what? Stopping now would be a waste of all that time? There's the fear of missing out. We're talking about limited time events, seasonal passes, daily login bonuses that are designed to create a potent anxiety that if you don't log in now, don't play today, you'll miss out on exclusive content, rewards, or progress that others are getting. Of course, this then leads us to the pay-to-skip trap. Many free-to-play open worlds deliberately make progression painfully slow and grinding unless you pay real money. They create a miserable experience you're incentivized to escape by spending. It's an engineered frustration and not a genuine choice. And sure, you can argue that you don't pay, but the reality is that a significant number of people pay. According to one study, there are about 3.2 billion gamers worldwide. Let's assume about 50% of those players regularly play free-to-play games or open-world games. That gives us roughly 1.6 billion relevant players. Mobile and F2P industry data shows that, on average, about 10% of players in free-to-play games spend money on any kind of microtransaction. That gives us around 160 million paying users in this space. Now, not all microtransactions are pay-to-skip. Some are cosmetic and some are power-ups, for example. So let's assume that just about 1/3 of those purchases are pay-to-skip. That's still 52.8 million people. And if on average, they spend $100 a year, that's over $5 billion annually on just paying to skip. Again, I went with a very, very conservative estimate here. There's also engagement loops via data. They collect data on your playstyle, and this data is then fed back into algorithms that subtly adjust the game in real time to personalize your hooks. Overall, this is the game as a service model. The ultimate planned obsolescence, if you will. This is the true tragedy. Gone are the days of a game being a complete product you own. Now you own nothing, and you aren't even happy. Games have become a service where your access is entirely at the publisher's whim. Updates, expansions, battle passes, cosmetics – these are engineered re-engagement triggers designed to perpetually fleece your wallet and your time. Yup, their business model depends on you never truly finishing or moving on. But even after you've sunk hundreds of dollars and thousands of hours, they can, and do, simply pull the plug. Games that require constant online connections, games with server-side components, games with licensed content. They can be, and are, killed by the corporation. Take the example of Ubisoft shutting down The Crew. It rendered purchased copies unplayable. This is the problem with modern-day gaming. You merely rent them until the corporate overlords decide your access is expired and they profit on keeping you addicted. This is planned obsolescence on an existential scale, which brings us to the Stop Killing Games movement. It's led by the YouTuber Ross Scott, and it's a direct challenge to this predatory practice. They're demanding legislation that forces publishers to make sure games remain playable, even after official support ends. They want offline modes for online-only games so that games don't become unplayable after servers go dark. They want access to server files to allow communities to host their own private servers so that games can be kept alive indefinitely. And they want true digital ownership that redefines purchase to mean what it always did. You buy it, you own it. Very simple, isn't it? As you can expect, the evil of the world is lobbying against the movement. But this type of thing is the need of our times. Otherwise, games have already become a predatory service, and soon, it'll be too late. So, a final thought, friend to friend. Keep an eye on your own mental health. If a game feels less like an escape and more like a compulsion, if the fun has morphed into just another grind for dopamine hits, then step back and recognize the manipulation for what it is. You deserve better than to be a data point in someone else's quarterly report. Play what you want, how you want. If you find solace in a sprawling RPG, great. If a tight linear narrative is your jam, even better. But whatever you play it consciously. Don't let the predatory practices of modern corporations twist your passion, or worse, consume your valuable time and mental well-being for their endless profit. Because in the end, games are supposed to be about our experience, our adventure, and our enjoyment. Let's make sure it stays that way.